Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, I'm working on a 1957 GMC 100 half-ton pickup truck. And in the last video I did, I mounted this cab onto a 1977 C10 frame. Now this frame is a long bed frame and I need to cut this thing down to shorten it up to match the original wheelbase. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, is doing a cut. I've just been sitting here kind of doing my layout on the frame and trying to figure out exactly where I wanted to place it. So in just a second I'll bring you in closer and I'll kind of show you what I'm doing. Alright, so the way I'm going to shorten this frame is with a step cut, or a Z cut they call it, basically. I need to take a total of 16 inches out of this frame. So from this line to this line is 8 inches, and this line to this line is 8 inches, so this total span right here is 16 inches. So what I'm going to do is I marked my center line here at 8 inches, and then I drew a line through the center of the frame this direction. Now what I'm going to do is I got these marked and this one marked to cut these pieces out completely of the frame. And then what you do then is you pull the frame together, then this will overlap this piece here, and then you can weld them together, and that's a step cut. So it just gives you much more welding surface and much more strength. So you guys that are paying attention probably noticed immediately that where my screw up was, and I only took out 8 inches out of this frame on the first cut. I was having a heck of a time this day for some reason, and me and the tape measure were just not getting along, so not a big deal. I just had to go back and take a little bit extra later on, but it worked out in the end, so have fun watching me struggle. Now I know I could light the internet on fire with what I'm about to say, but it's a hotly debated item, but you can get away with just doing a straight cut on this thing. Back in the day when I had a rock crawler truck that me and a friend built, and I ended up cutting the frame straight, and I just did one big weld, and then I put a piece of 1/4-inch plate on the back side of the frame about that far apart from the center line. I had no issues at all with that thing for years and years and years of driving that thing and just absolutely beating the heck out of it. I never had any issues with the frame whatsoever. And that thing had a 50-gallon fuel tank on the back of the bed, on the back of the flatbed. I'll throw a picture up of it so you can see it. But it had a lot of weight. It went through a lot of articulation and a lot of twists, so I never had any issues. But that being said, this is definitely a better idea. I like it better. You definitely get a lot more strength, a lot more welding surface. So this is definitely the method that I'm going to go with. All right, I think I got everything measured out and ready to go. So let me show you what I got. And then for the radius, I'm just going to do these by hand because it's not a big deal to cut this by hand. It's so minor. So I just took a washer and traced it out in the corners that I needed to radius, which would be this one, and then the saddle of this one, and the saddle of this one down here. Okay, I'm just going to start cutting this top one here and then this bottom one underneath first. Alright, she's free. It's actually balanced really well. It's just sitting here. I put a jack underneath the pinion just to kind of keep it from falling forward. I figured it was pretty balanced, and it is, so that's good. Alright, next what I got to do is just separate this thing, and then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and do these cuts in here. And then I'll go ahead and get this radius. I'll just do this by hand once I get in here close, because I don't want to cut into the corner, otherwise I'm defeating the purpose of doing the radius. So I have to stop just short of the radius, and that's what I'll do here, and then I'll finish this off by hand. And I got to do this one and this one as well. So what I'll do now is I'll just go ahead and I'll push this back section back out of my way. All right, I got the frame out of the way. Now I just got to finish this cut right here. Okay. Now I need to do the back half. All right, I got that cut. And again, I'm just short of the radius, so now I'll go ahead and get in here and I'll probably just try to angle cut that. And then I'll get in there with a grinder and I'll just work that by hand. All right, I got the radiuses done. I'm definitely gonna have to massage this, I'm sure. I'll find out in a second how far off I am. A couple of these, I got a little deep in the pocket right here, so that's gonna give me a gap, but that's okay. It won't be too bad. I can clean it up and massage it a little bit, but that is definitely one for using a drill bit or a hole saw right here. I should have just even used a drill bit, but I got impatient with it. But it'll be totally fine. I'll clean it up and I'll get the gaps all straightened out on it. There won't be any worries at all. So I'm gonna put this thing together real quick, kind of clean up my mess a little, make some room, push it together and see how far off I am. All right, I've been grinding on this thing for a little bit, trying to get it just finessed a little bit. It's not 100% perfect, but it's gonna be just fine. So let me show you. Let me put the frame back together again. Let me show you. Okay. All right, so this side fit pretty good. Just a little bit right there. It's a little splayed out right here. I got to get it even with each other and clamp it all the way around. Again, this is just mock-up right now just to get me close, but the gap's all pretty good. That'll weld up really, really nicely. This side over here is where I had a little bit of an issue. I just got it opened up a little bit too far right here, a little more for my liking. It'll be perfectly fine. It's not going to be an issue at all because it's going to be welded on the backside. That'll let me get a good root weld in there. It'll be just fine. Otherwise, I'm fine all the way, the rest of the way up too. And then on the bottom as well, it's good. So that's the only larger gap there that I'm not happy with, but it'll be completely fine once it's all burned in. I'm going to weld it on both sides, and then this will all be ground smooth, so you'll never even see any of this anyway. It'll all disappear, and then I'll plate it on the inside of the frame as well. I'll do a nice big plate. I just got to get some more clamps now and get the frame good and square with each other before I start welding it. And I'll go get the welder and just start tacking this thing together and burn it in. And just double, triple check everything before it. Well, I don't know what happened, but I made a mistake. So I'm way off on my measurement here, so I need to take more out of the frame than I did. So again, I double checked it, but apparently I don't know how to read a tape measure. So mistakes happen, I guess, but no big deal. So the hard part is just trying to figure out these other lines and, you know, stretch it out a little bit, but not a big deal. It's just a little bit of a setback. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that and get on that and fix my screw up. But again, better to take not enough than too much. So, all right, I'm going to fix this thing. I'll get back with you. Welcome back, guys. The next day, I messed with this thing yesterday into the early evening just trying to get my mistake fixed, and I think I've got it figured out now. I've got it pretty well massaged and put back into position where it needs to be. So let me show you how it turned out. All right, so I've got it pretty well fitted up. I had to take an additional 8 inches out of this thing, so now that moved me really far up close to the cab mount, and then also where the spring hanger was right here. So I had to take and knock the rivets out of the spring hanger and drop the axle out of this thing now, which actually might work out to my favor because I think I'm going to be able to move this axle still forward just a tiny bit, and if I can get into here a little bit further forward into where it's welded, it'll just add extra strength to that joint right there. Even though I'm not really worried about it, but I've got it massaged pretty well. I got a decent gap all the way around. A little bit there, a little bit wider in the front than I'd like, but it'll be perfectly fine. I'll get a good root pass in there. It'll be good to go. So on the other side, basically the same thing. Of course, as soon as I clamp this side, that side shifted out. So, but that side fits pretty well. Again, just a little bit more of a gap in the front than I'd like, but it'll be perfectly fine. If I got it fitted up, I test fit it and everything, it'll be fine. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here on the passenger side and I'm just going to start tacking this. I got a little bit of fitment to do right here in the middle. This top edge is just out just a tiny bit, but down here it's perfectly flat. So I'm just going to start tacking down here, and then I'll work my way down that seam to get it perfectly flush with one another, and then work this seam up here. Just take my time with it, get it good and flat, and then I'll get over to the other side and I'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, I think I got everything pretty well set. This is really nice and flush. It's perfect right here. So I'm just going to tack this first, start here, get this corner tacked up and this corner tacked up. And then I just got to work this a little bit more. And this has got to come up just a little bit. The clamp's kind of pushing it all down right now. And I'll just work my way that way. And then I got the other side fitted up pretty good too. Again, I'll do the same thing. I'll just tack it together and then get it fitting really nice. All right, so I got those tacked. Fits really good. So I'm gonna go, I think I'm gonna go to the other side, try to massage that one and get that one fitting up right. I'll start in the front just like this one, and then I'll work my way back with the whole thing. All right, this one was a little bit of a fight, but I've got it really flush right here. I'm just gonna tack it right here, and then I've got to slowly work it. This front piece right here is kind of sticking out a little bit more than I want, and I'm just gonna move this clamp down as I go. Down here is pretty good. And then out here, it's just got to come out a little bit, so I'm going to have to do this little by little, I think. There we go. That's perfect there. Now I'm going to pull this back part into alignment. Okay, now that middle seam feels really good, so. Feels really good across the top. This edge feels really good, and this feels perfect down here too, so I'm just going to tack this real quick. I'm going to see if I can work this a little better, try to knock it down a little bit. There, that feels really good on the inside. All right, I got pretty good fitment there. Pretty happy with that. Nice and tight, nice and even. It's nice and flush up here. It's nice and flush down here. Yeah, it's perfectly flush. So once this is all ground smooth, you'll never see any of that. I'd like to fill all these holes in too, but I don't know. We'll see. It's kind of a pain in the butt doing that, but we'll see how it goes. All right, I'm gonna go do the other side. All right, this side's pretty good. I just put a clamp on here just to squeeze those two together, these two seams. It feels really good all the way down here. It's perfectly flat. I just gotta work this corner just a tiny bit right here. And these frames aren't perfect, man. These things are just so... the way they bend and twist and everything. All you can do is just get them as close as you possibly can. None of these trucks were built with any kind of perfection, that's for damn sure. So, but, all right, I'm gonna tack these up. And of course the wind's blowing as soon as I wanna do this. It never fails. I'm going to try to get these two together. They're off just a little bit this way, so I'm just going to try to rock it back. I'd like that to be a little better. Let's see if I can tap it. There we go. All right, that's perfect. All right, now I just got to fix this little edge up here, but I think I can just tap it with the hammer. There, that's good. Now, I check my bottom here. All right, this feels really good, so I'm going to tack the inside. All right, so here's the fitment on the passenger side. Looks good. Like I said, just a tiny bit more gap than I want at the front, but it's going to be perfectly fine. That thing will burn in really nice. Nice and tight though, it looks good. All right, I think I'm ready to pretty much burn this together now. I did a couple welds on the seam on the bottom, on the inside, on both sides, just to keep everything good and secure. And I got my little cheat light here. So I have a hell of a time seeing sometimes with this stuff, but I'm going to try to burn this together. See how it comes out. Just going to move around as much as I can here. All right, here's the first two. It's pretty good. All right, I got those two locked in. I'm gonna go over to the other side and do that one now. Alright, here's these two. Maybe we can get that one perfect, but that's okay. It'll be all ground off. That one there I got really good, so. Alright, I'm just going to zigzag back and forth, work my way across this thing. Alright, I got that done. Looks pretty good. It'll definitely be strong enough. Good enough for a YouTube weld, eh? Alright. On to the other side. Good enough. And again, this is going to be all ground smooth, so you'll never see it once it's done. So, all right. Oh, kills my back. Now I'm just going to work on the inside. I'm going to get the inside of the frame rails burned together. I won't show you any of that. And then I got to make some fish plates, if you will, to box the inside too. So, and then there's just going to be a ton of grinding. So, yeah, either I'll show you when I'm done, or just kind of I'll time lapse it, or whichever. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to make it too boring for you. I'm sure you've seen this stuff before. So, all right, cool. Thanks for watching, though. You can see I got everything welded up on the inside, and then I'm going to make a fish plate and put a plate on there too, just to give it a little bit of extra, but it'll be perfectly fine. This thing will be way stronger than it was originally. So now that that's done, I got to put this axle back into position because, of course, I had to take this bracket off because it just got really close to this hole here. So I just need to grind this weld a little bit so the bracket overlaps right here. And then I can bolt this thing up and check my measurement and see my axle position between the cab mount and the axle center line, see how close I am. I still may have to move this axle forward just a little bit, which actually would be perfectly fine with me, because then if I could overlap that seam and this seam right here with the bracket, I'd be perfectly fine with that too. So, and then basically I can just dial this thing in exactly wherever I want it. So I'm going to grind that weld off and smooth it out, and then get this bracket moved up into position, and then just put a couple bolts in it just to hold it, and then I can take my measurements. All right, so I got part of this smoothed out here, just so I can, the bracket bolts up right here, so I just wanted to clean that weld up, and I got it partially cleaned in case I got to move the thing forward. So we'll see how that goes. And I just got the bracket cleaned up a little bit. I'm going to go over and do the other side real quick. All right, it's all cleaned up, got it nice and smooth here. I'll have to go through this hole real quick with a drill bit because it was really close when I welded that. So, all right, so I am going to have to move this axle forward a few inches, which is perfectly fine. So I went ahead and ground the rest of the frame nice and smooth. I just got a little bit to do there by the mount, which is no big deal, but it came out really nice. Looks nice and smooth. So now I could have taken more out as far as that Z-cut, but I wanted, that's 12 inches, it's got 12 inches worth of overlap, and that's what I wanted. I wanted something, I didn't want to reduce that anymore, so it actually works out okay. I can go ahead and move this axle forward, and I can set this thing up perfectly for the bed too, and I can get the bed nice and tight to the cab. So it does give me a lot of options and a lot of freedom to do what I need to do. It's not going to affect anything back here over the arch. And then also it's going to give me plenty of extra room off the back of the frame to cut as well. Because then I can cut the back of the frame. I can tailor that to the bed specifically. So what I'm going to do is I got to knock all these rivets out now for the rear spring hangers. I'll just go ahead and slide this whole thing forward a few inches and get it all set up. And then I'd like to get the bed rigged up on the gantry crane and get the bed set on there. And then once I get the bed on there, that I can really fine tune the wheelbase to make sure everything is perfect. I really want this thing, I'm kind of obsessing over it a little bit too much, I think, just because I want it to be perfect. I want the wheels centered. You know, I don't want people to be able to tell, basically. That's one thing. All right, I got the front brackets moved forward, and I just got 2 bolts in there for now, just to hold it. So I moved it forward about 4 inches. And that'll give me plenty of room. And actually the good thing is too now is I'm gonna have this bracket overlapping the middle seam, so that's gonna give it even more strength. That's gonna be nice. So the other one's on, the front one, both front ones are on, ready to go. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and do the rears, move the rear forward. All right, I got it back down on the ground. Rear brackets have 2 bolts in it for right now. And so far all my measurements are coming out correct. So now what I want to do is try to just get this bed lifted up and get it on the frame of the truck. All right, so it's the next day, and I noticed when I was editing this video I had some problems with the audio, so I'm just going to go ahead and go over this thing again with you guys and show you the final result of the bed on the frame, or at least not the final result, but near the final result anyway. I just have the bed set here on top of it. Still a few things to do, but let me show you how it fits. All right, so overall I'm really happy with the fit, how everything came out. My gap here along the cab is basically where it was from the factory. It's actually a little bit tight even right now. I need to slide it back just a tiny bit, but then my wheel well axle center line in the center of the wheel well is pretty much spot on. It actually needs to go back maybe just slightly, but as that leaf spring compresses, this truck's going to be lowered too quite a bit. It's going to be pretty low to the ground. So all this is going to be reconfigured anyway, but as long as my axle center line is in the center there of the wheel well, that's where I wanted it, and then, you know, there'll be a little bit of adjustment later. Everything up in the front came out really good. The hangers, there's plenty of room for the hangers on the bed there on that side. And then on that side, of course, no fitment issues at all. The rear hangers back here are really good too. No issues at all with fitment. Plenty of room all around. Now, I still got to bob the back of the frame off right here. The bed is just sitting on top of the frame rail here. I have to cut this cross member out and move it forward, and the bed needs to come down. This flat part here, this bracket, needs to sit on the frame, so the frame rail has to be cut back here. So I got to bob that off real quick and get that done, then the bed will sit all the way down the way it's supposed to. I'm pretty happy with everything, how it all came out, even though, you know, a little bit of extra work and I had to fix my mistake and move the axle forward and whatnot, but that was fine with me. So, you know, in moving the axle, it does affect other things. It does affect the shock position now. It does affect the parking brake cable position a little bit, but that's okay. I can knock those brackets off and move those things forward a little bit. And then the shocks I'm not worried about, because when this truck is lowered, it's going to completely change the shock position anyway, and I'll probably make a custom cross member in the back anyway to mount new shocks, because those shocks, once the truck is lowered, those original shocks are not going to work. They're going to be way too tall. So it's not something I'm concerned with at all. One of the big things that I really wanted to make sure of was my bed, my gap to the back of the cab was really good, and then my axle center line was right on the money too. Those were my two biggest concerns. I really wanted this thing to be basically back to original as much as possible, and I really want this thing to look good for her. All right, got the rear cross member knocked out of here. Now I'll go ahead and get the bed back in position where it was, and then I can mark the frame and cut the frame off. All right, she's cut, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing back down. It's a little bit sketchy, but it's all right. All right, I got it down. Fits a lot better. And of course, the bumper will cover those frame horns up. But now these are down on top of the frame. The frame's sitting in here nice. All right, so anyway, I think that's it for this episode. The bed's down on the frame. Of course, I got to mount it and all that. There's so much more to do, of course, with it. But just getting this frame shortened, getting the bed mounted to this thing, man, it was a huge hurdle. And as some of you may have noticed in the video, as I talk about this, you've already seen it, but my mistake I made when I only took out 8 inches when I thought I was taking 16, it was only 8. So, you know, one of those things, I totally screwed the pooch on that deal. I just got too impatient. I wasn't thinking clearly on the whole thing, but no big deal. I got it fixed, so it worked out in the end. Everything worked out, no problem. Next episode, I'm not sure exactly. I'm going to try to get the front sheet metal figured out. I still haven't ruled out using the original GMC core support on this thing and maybe trying to fab a cross member in the front to support it. Maybe, I don't know, I'm thinking about it. So I might look into that a little bit, and then I'll let you know. You'll know in the next video what I decide to do. That or it's no big deal to just buy a Chevy core support and be done with it too. Well, thanks for following along and watching me screw up and learn from my mistakes, but again, that's part of the game. So, all right, I appreciate you watching. Thanks for your time. I'll see you on the next one.